Why did the lab-grown chicken cross the road? Because it was bioengineered to do so. Let's jump right into the meat of the matter. The meat of the future, that is. Lab-grown meat, also known as cultivated meat, is turning heads and stirring pots in the food industry. Health enthusiasts in particular are keeping an eye on this sizzling new trend. Now you might be wondering, how does one grow a steak in a lab? Well, it all starts with the isolation of high-quality cells from animal tissue. These cells are then fed with nutrients and grown in bioreactors until they're ready to be harvested and transformed into delicious, mouth-watering meat products. Imagine a world where your favorite cuts of meat are produced without the need for traditional farming. This could mean lower greenhouse gas emissions, reduced land use, and a more sustainable food system. But as with any revolution, there are challenges to overcome. The cost of production is high, and replicating the texture of conventional meat is a scientific hurdle. Yet over 150 startups are working tirelessly to make lab-grown meat not only a reality, but a common item on your dinner plate. So, lab-grown meat is not a sci-fi fantasy anymore. It's here, and it's making a sizzling entrance. But before you start planning your lab-grown BBQ party, let's not forget that every great invention comes with its share of challenges. Now, the lab-grown meat industry is no exception to this rule. It's like trying to bake the perfect loaf of bread, but instead of flour and yeast, you're working with animal cells and bioreactors. And let's not even get started on the price tag. It's a little more than your average supermarket steak, to say the least. One of the biggest hurdles is the high cost of production. It's like trying to create a Michelin star dish on a fast food budget. The process involves isolating high-quality cells from animal tissue, feeding them with nutrients, and growing them in bioreactors. It's a process that requires time, precision, and a lot of resources. And while we're getting better at it, it's still not quite as simple as grilling a burger. Then there's the texture. Anyone who's bitten into a juicy steak knows that it's not just about the flavor. The feel of the meat, the way it falls apart in your mouth, that's part of the experience. And replicating that in a lab? Well, let's just say it's a work in progress. Next on the list, regulatory approval. It's one thing to create lab-grown meat, but it's another thing entirely to convince the powers that be that it's safe to eat. And since we're dealing with something that's never been done before, it's no surprise that the rule book is still being written. Lastly, there's the issue of consumer acceptance. We're creatures of habit, and the idea of swapping our farm-raised steaks and burgers for something grown in a lab is, well, a bit of a stretch for some folks. There's also the perception of lab-grown meat. Is it natural? Is it real meat? These are questions that consumers are still grappling with. So, while it's true that lab-grown meat holds a lot of promise, it's also clear that we've got some meaty issues to chew on. But hey, every cloud has a silver lining, or in this case, a meaty lining. Sure, we've been talking about the hurdles that lab-grown meat has to overcome, but it's not all doom and gloom in the world of cultivated protein. In fact, it's quite the opposite. These innovative solutions not only promise a tantalizing future for our taste buds, but also have the potential to drastically cut down on the environmental impact of traditional meat production. Picture this: land and feed previously needed for livestock could be significantly reduced. That's a future where your juicy burger might just be the greenest thing on your plate. And let's not forget the animal lives that could be saved. But what about the challenges? Well, the industry is getting creative. Think premium products like lab-grown caviar and foie gras. And let's not leave out the Japanese scientists turning to 3D bioprinters to recreate marbled Wagyu beef. So, while we may not be ready to say goodbye to our traditional steaks just yet, who knows? In a few years, we might be asking for our lab-grown meat medium rare. And remember, no animals were harmed in the making of this meat.